can't get you out of my mind. It's like I feel it for the first time. Been thinking about you all night. I've been searching for this all my life. You're just my type. I've been looking for...
Hey guys, welcome back to Life of a Dev. My name is Cameron, and today we're going to be continuing this Node.js application. I'm going to be showing you guys how to use Mongoose and in Node.js to add items to a Mongo database. If you don't already have MongoDB, you can download it from this website here. You can just Google MongoDB and go to mongodb.com, and then from there you should be able to hit software and just download the community server here. Click download MongoDB and just download the community server based on whatever OS you're using. Hit download and go ahead and install it. I already have everything installed. You're also going to need, well, at least we're going to be using MongoDB Compass, and that's going to allow us to look at our data within the database. It's just a GUI for us to be able to look at the data within our database. So once you have those two things, we can go ahead and start. This is the project that we were working on previously. It scrapes the Facebook Marketplace using Puppeteer and just gathers the Mongo Compass pop back up. Gathers the item title, the item price, the item URL, and the item image, and then pushes them to an array, and this function returns that array. So let's go ahead and get started so that way we can put these items into the database, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So to do that, we're going to need to install another package. We're going to need to install Mongoose. So we can go into a terminal here, go npm I mongoose, and just go ahead and hit enter, and that should install Mongoose. And once that's installed, we can go to the top of our application and make sure we include it. So const mongoose equals require mongoose. And then at the bottom, right here, right above our initiation function, we can go mongoose.connect, and we need the URL. So since we're running it locally, it will be at localhost. If you're running a offsite database, they will provide you with this connection string. So for us, since it's local, or at least for my case, since it's local, it's going to be MongoDB // localhost on port 27017 / and then the name of the database, which will be Facebook-scraper. If you don't have a database created, that's okay. Once it connects and once we insert the very first piece of information, it will create that database. So, and then followed by the URL, we just need a callback function, and we'll just return console.log, and it will just say connected connected to database. And then we can let's just go ahead and make sure that runs. So we type in node and just do period, indicating the index.js file. We get 2 deprecation warnings. So, and then it's going to load the website, and then it should return our items array. So yeah, it returned our items array here. So let's go back up to those deprecation warnings so we can remove those. So we need new URL parser equals true. So let's just go ahead and add that. So that's going to be right after our connection string and before our arrow function. So we'll throw in an object, and it will be new URL parser equals true, and then we also need this one. So let's go ahead and grab that as well. And comma. So you just pass those basically, you just pass those in through using an object, and then you use your callback. So I'm actually going to comment this out, so that way we're not actually running that function. So nothing should actually run, but we should still be able to connect to the database here. And that's really the only thing that should happen. So we connected to the database successfully, which is good. Now we need to create a schema, which is basically like the outline that will store our data. So what we'll do is we'll create a new folder. Let me go ahead and close that package.json file. We'll create a new folder called models. And within that folder, we will create a JS file called items schema, ama.js. In our items schema file, the first thing we need to do is bring mongoose in. So const mongoose is equal to require mongoose. And then we need to declare our item schema. So we'll go const item schema is equal to a new mongoose.schema. And then, spelled schema wrong over here. And within here, we'll just do an empty object. And then within this object is going to be our layout or our schema for the data. So we will need, the first thing we'll need is the item title. Basically, the schema is going to represent these pieces of information. So we can just go ahead and actually copy that. So item title, and within you can kind of picture this as like, this is the database table, and then these are like, or this is the, I guess it could be like the table, and then these are like each data set, I guess it would be, or each data field, and they have different properties. So one property is the type, and it can be a date, a number, a string, a boolean. Basically, I believe it can be an object. Yeah, so it can be all of the 8 different JavaScript data types. I believe there's 8 or 6. I can't remember exactly. But for right now, we're mainly going to be using strings. So type of string, and then it also has a required property. And this says if it's required or not. It is going to be required, so we're going to set that to true. And then you can also set a default property, and you can set it to whatever you want, but we're not going to be using a default property. We're just going to have type and required. And then the next thing will be the price. So item price is another object with a type. You could do number, but since our program grabs the price and within the price is a $, we wouldn't want to do a number. We'd want to do a string, so that's what we're going to do. If you didn't have that $, or if you were to use like .split at the $, for this item price, you could use a number, but it's easier just for us to use a string for now. And required will be equal to true. And then same thing with the item URL. Item URL, another object with the type of, once again, a string, and required true as well. And then the item image, which will also be a string because it's just a URL to the image. So type of string and required equals true. So that's basically all the data that we need. I do want to add one more piece of data, which will be the timestamp, which will be when it was added to the database. So timestamp, this will be a type of date, and it will be required. Required equals true, and it will also have a default property, which will be set to date.now. And I forgot a comma there, that's why it's freaking out. So that's basically our item schema, or our schema for our database. The last thing we need to do is actually export this schema so that we can use it in our index.js file. And how we're going to do that is we will do modules, or module.exports equals mongoose.model, and then we need to give it a name, so we'll just give it a name of item, and we will reference the item schema, or we need to actually put the schema that we built, which is this right here. And there's our item schema. We're all set and ready to go, so we can go ahead and close that out. And we have Mongoose up here. We've connected to the database. So the next thing we need to do is bring in our schema. So we can go const item schema is equal to require ./models.item schema, just like that. And now what we can do is we can create a new function. So we'll go const, we'll call it add to DB. Add to DB is equal to an arrow function. And in here we're going to take in the, what do we call it? We just call it item, I think, items. So it will take in an item variable, or parameter. Within this function, we're going to use destructuring to pull the title, the price, the URL, and the image variable, all from this item variable here, or parameter, or argument. So what we'll do is we'll do const, and then we'll do some destructuring. We'll do item title, item price, item URL, and item image. Item image is all equal to this item argument or parameter. And then now we'll actually get into using our item schema to see if this item's already in the database or not. And if it's not, then we will add it to the database. So what we'll do is we will do item.findOne, which will find one record in the database, or it won't, based off of some credentials or some conditions. So what we'll do is the conditions are in an object format, and basically we're going to find any items in the database that have the same item title, the same item price, and the same item URL. And since the item title and everything matches inside the schema, since it all matches inside the schema, we don't have to, we can just put it in like that. If it was something different, if it was like item title for sale, then what we'd have to do is we'd have to do like item title for sale : item title. So basically what you're doing is you're doing the item you're searching for based off the schema, and then your actual value, which is the item title, which I just noticed I messed up completely. I was in the wrong line. But basically it'd be like whatever the schema is, and then whatever item it is, or whatever condition or value you're searching for based off the schema. But since our schema matches and everything matches up with our value or our values here, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do like : and then the value. If you didn't understand that, I'm sorry. If you need help comment below and I can try to do a better job of explaining that. So basically what we're doing is we're using our schema to find one document in the database that has a matching title, has a matching price, and a matching URL. And the reason we do this is because we don't want to insert the exact same post into the database. But let's say someone uploads an iPhone and then a week later the price drops. The item title and the item price won't match. So it will basically be a new record, and then that record will be added to the database, which we can use as history. And we can see if people are dropping the prices on their iPhones or not. Same thing, the item URL will probably be a little bit different. The item title might be the same, but the item URL might even be the same, but the item price will be different. So that's why we use these three pieces of information, because then we can track items as prices rise or fall, depending on what the user selling the item is doing. If you weren't doing this, works for this specific case. If you're doing like a login system or something, obviously these credentials would be different, or these conditions would be different. So item schema.findBy1 are conditions, and then this is asynchronous, so we can do .then, and then we can also do .catch. And what we're going to do is we're actually just going to do an arrow function, and this will just return a string that says, we'll just call it a database finding error. Okay. And then in this then statement, so basically this is where either it found an item or it didn't. So we need to do another arrow function. But this will be the item or the document. So we'll just call it document or a doc. This is the document that's within the database. So basically what we have here is we can go if doc, so if a document exists, then we want to return, and we can just return that the item is already in database. That's what we'll do. DATABASE. Okay, item is already in database. And then we can go if not doc, so if no document was found, then we can create a new item and insert that. So what we'll do is we'll do const new item is equal to new item schema. New item schema. And then we will, so each of these, like the item title, the item price, the item URL, they're all kind of like methods on this new item. So what we'll do is we'll do new item dot item title is equal to item title, new item dot item price is equal to item price, new item dot item URL is equal to item. See, I don't know why my cursor jumps around like that. Item URL, new item dot item image is equal to item image, item img. Okay. TLE is how it's supposed to be spelled. Okay. All right. Now we have no errors. So basically we declare the new item, the item title, the new item price, the new item URL, the new item image, and then we need the timestamp. So new item dot timestamp, TIMESTAMP is equal to date dot now. And I believe I'm just going to copy it just to make sure that that's spelled right. Yeah, okay. So once we declare our new item based on our item schema, we populate each of the data sets. We can then run a method on the new item variable called save. And this is asynchronous, so once again we can have a then method and a catch method. And within this catch method, we will do an arrow function, which will return, we'll just go database, BASE saving error. So we have a database saving error. If it does save properly, we're going to return something that just says item added to database, and once we have that, we actually just want to return this whole statement. So we'll just put a return here, return item schema. So let me go over this function and kind of explain what this does. So we're declaring a function which takes in a parameter of item. We're getting the information from the item because this item parameter is going to be an object, and that object is going to contain these pieces of information. It will contain the item title, the item price, the item URL, and the item image URL. And then we will return the item schema.find1, which is a method of this item schema, which will find a document within the database based on these conditions, which is the item title, the item price, and the item URL. Once it searches the database, it will return a document. If that document is found, it means the item is already in the database, and we return a statement saying the item is already in the database. If the document is not found, there's no item in the database. So we declare a new item is equal to, or we declare the fact that new item is equal to the item schema. We then populate the data of that new item, which is the item title, the item price, the item URL, the item image URL, and the timestamp, which is right then in the second. Then we try to save that new item to our database via the save method. Once we perform the save, if it goes through, we just return item added to database. If there's an error, we return database saving error. And then if there's an error finding a document, we return database finding error. And that's all returned through this function. So what we can then do, so since this function's built out now, we can go down to our initial scraper init scrape. Let me just make sure I'm not running anything. And what we'll do is, so in the previous video I showed you how to build this function, the getItems function, and this function scrapes the Facebook Marketplace and returns an array, this array right here, this array of objects. So what we'll do, and then we set the return value of this function to this items variable. So since this is an array of objects, we can use the for each. So we'll do items.forEach. And we want this for each to have a callback function. We also want this callback function to be asynchronous. So we'll do that. And then within this callback function, what we're going to do is we'll also have a parameter called item. So basically for each item we will, sorry, it's probably going to give me a problem. Yeah, item is defined but never used. Okay, that's fine. So for each item, we want to do const, we'll do const save, or we'll do database db message msg is equal to await and then our new function that we declared, so add to database, and then we'll pass the item in. So basically when this runs, it will wait for this function to finish, and this DB message will be one of these strings, because we're returning at the end, we're returning either that the item's already in the database, the item was added to the database, there was an error saving it to the database, or there was an error finding it in the database. So, and then we can just do console.log. We'll just log the DB message. So if we were to run this in our terminal, let me just clear this out. If we were to run this program, it should grab all the iPhones off the marketplace, and then for each iPhone, it should try to add it to the database. So let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. So we'll just do node dot, or we can just do node index.js. And this is running Puppeteer in the background. As you see, we connected to the database successfully. And let's see if it adds our items to the database. So we got undefined. So I don't know why it's returning undefined. Add to database item. Okay. Did our data get into the database? Let me see. Let's connect here. Let's close out of that. And let's see if we have a database. So we do have a database called Facebook Scraper with the items. And as you see here, we do have items in that database. Why was it set to undefined? So return if doc. I don't know why. Let's run it again and see what we get if we get undefined, because some of those items should be in the database, so therefore we should get at least one of these messages. Yeah, items already in database, items already in database, items already in database, undefined, items already in database. So it's only on this then statement, which I don't understand, because that should be fine. Well, I know what our problem is. Right here, we need to return this, because this statement is being returned, but it's not actually being returned. So I don't know how to explain this. So this returns this statement, but this is never being returned so that it can be returned back through the function. So we need to return that. If we do that, we should now. I mean, the database is pretty full. I doubt it's going to find any more new iPhones, but let's see. Items already in database, already in database, already in database. So yeah, so it's just looping over all these items that are already in the database. So what we'll do is, I'm just going to go ahead and delete the database, the entire database. Facebook-scraper. So that database will be deleted completely. We'll terminate that job, and so database is no longer there. So if we run it again, now we should get the fact that it says item added to database. We were just missing that return statement, basically. So it should be loading. Yeah, item added to database, item added to database. Awesome. So I kind of like this, but I wish it was a little more specific about what it's adding to the database. So what we'll do is, instead of having it just say item added to database, let's turn this into a template literal, and we can delete these quotations here. And instead of it saying item added to database, now that it's a template literal, we can use some JavaScript, and we will do the item title followed by a colon. So that way we'll actually say the title of the item, and then it will say that will be followed by added to database. And then same thing up here. Let's turn this into a template literal here and delete these quotations, these single quotes, and instead of having item, we will have item title, and then followed by is already in the database. So now if we run that, we should see something a little bit different. It should say either the item title is already in the database or item title added to database. So let's see. iPhone, awesome, is already in database, is already in database. So is already in database, already in database. Added to database, added to database. Awesome. And then we can go here, we can refresh, we can terminate terminate our program, and we should have a new database called Facebook Scraper, which we do, a collection called items, and then in this collection we have our data sets, or our data sets or documents, and they contain a timestamp, and the ID is automatically generated. They have the timestamp, the title, the price, and then the link to both the image and the actual item. Don't forget to leave a like on today's video. In the next tutorial, I'll be showing you guys how to use a package called NodeMailer, and what we'll actually be doing is we'll use NodeMailer to send a text message with this information and the image to our phone. So basically, you can have this application running. It will search Facebook, and if a new item's found, it will add it to the database. If it's already in the database, you won't get a new text message. That's the whole reason we incorporated the database here. And once it's added to the database, it will then send you a text message with the image of the item saying like, hey, I found a new item. So that'll be the next tutorial. If you guys are interested, it will be in the playlist. Link in the playlist will be down below. If you haven't seen the previous tutorial on how to scrape a website using Puppeteer, where we create this function right here, link to that will also be in the description below. So I hope to see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to leave a like, and I'll see you guys around. Later, guys.